This channel is not designed for entertainment or viral content. It exists for people who are actively healing, seeking clarity, or exploring the psychology behind their emotions and patterns. Every episode is carefully written and produced with emotional depth, reflection, and care. If you're here expecting casual commentary, high-energy hosts, surface-level discussions, flashy production, or entertainment-focused content, then we gently refer you to other channels offering just that. At DeepDive, we focus on quiet, deep, and intentional content to support those on a real mental health journey. If that's you, then welcome to our channel. You're in the right place.
Welcome to the Deep Dive podcast channel. If you've ever felt, a really profound sense of sadness, maybe a muted joy, or just this kind of inexplicable disconnect, you might have stopped and wondered what's really going on here. Today we're taking a deep dive into something that touches so many lives, yet is often deeply misunderstood. Depression. And this conversation, it isn't about calling anyone broken or saying it's just a bad day.
Yeah.
Not at all. It's really about gently peeling back the layers, trying to understand a complex human experience from a deeper, more compassionate place. Our mission today is to explore the deeper psychology behind depression, reframing it, not seeing it as some kind of deficit, but maybe as a signal, even perhaps a form of protection. We're going to uncover some, surprising insights into its often hidden roots and talk about some really compassionate tools for finding your way back to yourself.
That's exactly it. And it's just so important for anyone who's feeling this way to hear that your pain makes sense. It really does. And you are absolutely not alone in this.
Okay, let's unpack this then, because often when we hear about depression, the conversation starts and frankly often ends with chemical imbalance.
Right.
But is that really the full picture? Is it just brain chemistry?
Well, while biology definitely plays a part, the truth, as we understand it now, goes much, much deeper than just that.
Okay.
Modern psychology, especially when you look through a trauma-informed lens, really highlights how our lived experiences, our past emotional injuries, and our body's own intelligent survival responses, they're profoundly influential. So from this perspective, depression often starts to look more like a form of protection.
Protection.
Yeah, like a signal that something important inside you is maybe unprocessed or unmet, or maybe just hasn't been seen.
Right. When I think survival responses, my mind usually jumps straight to fight or flight. We all know those. But you're mentioning a third one, almost like an emergency brake for the system. What happens when that gets pulled? What does that actually feel like?
That's a great way to put it, an emergency brake. Because that third response, just as powerful, is the freeze response.
Freeze, okay.
It's what happens in your nervous system when your brain basically decides that fighting or escaping is impossible. Or maybe it hasn't worked before.
Ah, I see.
So it enters this state of shutdown, numbness, emotional flatness. It's like your body's way of conserving energy.
And what does that look like day to day for someone?
Well, for you, the listener, this might feel like just bone-deep exhaustion, even if you've slept for hours.
Right.
It can feel like you're emotionally offline, like the plug's been pulled on joy or meaning, or just this deep sense of disconnection, maybe from yourself, maybe from others.
Wow.
And here's the really crucial part, I think. In this context, depression is not weakness. It's your body, quite intelligently, saying, look, we've been in survival mode way too long. We're running on empty. We desperately need safety.
Okay, that freeze state, I can really picture that. And thinking about our modern lives, the constant demands, the pressure, it feels like that could really push the system to its absolute limit. So how does that ongoing stress, that chronicity, contribute to this kind of shutdown? And maybe you could touch on the difference between that deep state and just, feeling sad.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. Sadness, that's a healthy emotion, right? It's usually passing, often tied to something specific. It comes, it goes.
Right.
Depression, especially viewed this way, is more of a chronic state. It's a pervasive nervous system condition almost of shutdown, numbness, disconnection. And it genuinely impacts your functioning, often for weeks, months, sometimes longer.
Okay.
And yes, chronic stress is a huge factor here. I mean, think about how many of us live with our sympathetic nervous system constantly switched on.
Always on.
Always on alert, feeling overwhelmed, maybe overstimulated, often feeling really undersupported. Over time, that whole stress response system just gets exhausted. It burns out, it runs out of fuel, and eventually it can lead to a collapse.
And that collapse looks like?
It can look like burnout, yeah. A total loss of motivation. Maybe cycles of feeling incredibly tense, wired, followed by just crashing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that emotional reactivity we feel under stress, it flips into this kind of chilling numbness. You might notice cognitive fog, being really forgetful, finding it hard to make decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, your brain can only run on adrenaline and cortisol for so long before it instinctively, protectively starts to pull back through withdrawal, shutdown, detachment.
So if the body's in this shutdown state, protecting itself, what happens to our emotions then? Because, so many of us are taught, be strong, stay positive, even when we're really hurting inside.
Right.
It sounds like that could actually backfire. What's the cost of pushing those feelings down?
Oh, the cost is huge and often invisible at first. When we suppress what hurts, those emotions, they don't just vanish into thin air.
Yeah.
They turn inward.
Yeah.
And they can express themselves through that very disconnection we talked about, sometimes to physical illness or, absolutely, through depression.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Like grief that hasn't been felt, it can kind of curdle into this pervasive apathy, just feeling hollow, flat.
Okay.
Or unspoken anger, maybe anger we weren't allowed to show. That can manifest as just crushing fatigue, makes everything feel impossible.
Wow.
And sadness that wasn't validated, wasn't met with understanding, that often sinks deep and becomes this internalized shame. The longer we kind of avoid the truth of what we feel, the more distant we become from ourselves.
And you mentioned shame there. That feels like a big one.
It's huge. Shame whispers or sometimes shouts, there's something fundamentally wrong with me.
Right.
And that drives this deep emotional isolation. It can fuel perfectionism. If I'm perfect, maybe I'll be okay. And it just silences vulnerability, makes it feel too dangerous to show our real selves.
So these internalized messages like, I'm not good enough, or I'm too much, or...
Exactly. Or my feelings don't matter, I have to hide who I really am. These beliefs, often formed way back, maybe in childhood, maybe through painful experiences later.
Yeah.
They create this internal landscape that just feels inherently unsafe, unworthy, and incredibly lonely.
You've touched on disconnection and isolation quite a bit. It really sounds like our fundamental human need for connection is just central here.
Absolutely central. We are biologically wired for connection. Things like emotional safety, attunement, that feeling of someone really getting you feeling the presence of caring others. These aren't just nice to haves.
No.
They're biological necessities. They help regulate our nervous system. So when those core relational needs to be seen, to be soothed, to be accepted for who we are, when those go unmet consistently, your nervous system registers that as danger. And that can lead straight to isolation, withdrawal, sometimes a deep fear of intimacy, even though you crave it. And this just results in profound emotional fatigue.
So loneliness isn't just being physically alone.
Not at all. It's being unknown, emotionally unseen. And when you don't feel that connection, either to others or even sometimes to yourself, depression can almost become the brain's strategy to manage that unbearable pain. Just numb it out.
Okay.
And there's another layer, too. The need for meaning and purpose.
Right.
In trauma-informed work, we often say purpose is regulation. Having a sense of meaning, some agency in your life, it helps the brain feel safer, more grounded. Without it, people can really fall into what you might call existential depression, asking those big questions. Why bother? What's the point? Often fueled by unmet needs for creativity or autonomy, authenticity, feeling like you contribute something. That lack quietly fuels the numbness, too.
This brings up something important. When we hear trauma, often our minds go to really big, dramatic events, a single incident.
Right, like a car crash or combat.
Exactly. But are you suggesting it can be, well, quieter than that, more subtle, but still have this huge impact? Like, can that kind of thing actually cause depression?
That's such a critical point. And the answer is yes, absolutely. Trauma, in its various forms, can definitely lead to depression. It's so important we broaden our understanding of trauma beyond those big T traumas.
Okay.
We need to include developmental or emotional trauma, things like growing up in a home where emotions just weren't available, or being punished or shamed for having normal feelings, living with constant chaos or unpredictability, or having to kind of parent yourself or even your parents way too young.
Right, it's taking on too much responsibility.
Exactly. In those situations, depression often isn't some inherent disorder you were born with. It's a understandable, though painful, response to emotional abandonment or neglect. It's that survival shutdown kicking in.
And how might that show up in adulthood?
It can look like feeling chronically empty or disconnected, kind of numb inside, sometimes sabotaging good things, joy, closeness because they feel unfamiliar or unsafe, difficulty accessing hope or imagination, or even just desire for the future. And often this deep belief of, well, this is just how I am, like it's a fixed personality trait.
That sounds really familiar for some people.
It is. And there's also a really significant overlap between something called complex PTSD, or CPTSD, and chronic depression.
CPTSD.
Yeah. Many people with complex trauma, which often comes from ongoing relational or developmental wounds, not just one event, experience persistent depressive symptoms. It might include emotional flashbacks, totally collapsing after even minor stress, avoiding relationships, maybe being a chronic people pleaser, and this really persistent low self-worth.
So understanding those roots, it changes everything.
It really does. It reframes depression. It's not a malfunction, it's a survival story. It's actually a brilliant, if incredibly painful, adaptation your system made to cope with what felt impossible at the time.
That shift
Wow.
from seeing it as pathology, something wrong with you, to understanding it as protection, that feels huge. It really opens up a different way of relating to it.
It does.
So what does this mean then? If depression isn't a flaw, but this deep survival response, how do we even start to shift how we see it, how we approach it?
Well, here's a kind of radical but deeply compassionate idea to hold. What if those parts of you that feel unmotivated or flat or hopeless, what if they're actually trying to keep you safe?
Safe from what?
Safe from maybe more disappointment, more pain, maybe safe from the perceived risk of failure.
Okay.
In some therapy models, like internal family systems, we actually talk about these depressed parts not as enemies, but as protectors.
Protectors.
Yeah, they numb you out because maybe at some point in your past, feeling things fully was just too overwhelming, too much.
Right.
They shut you down because maybe being visible, being out there, meant getting hurt or rejected. Understanding this function, this protective intent, that's the shift from pathology to protection. And that creates space for compassion, for curiosity, and ultimately for healing.
That's such a hopeful reframe. And, as we're diving deeper into these really compassionate ways of understanding things, we really hope you, our listener, are finding some aha moments here. If these insights are resonating, if something's clicking for you, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button or leaving us a comment. It genuinely helps us reach more people who might need to hear this message of understanding and hope. Okay, so if healing isn't about just forcing ourselves to be happy or powering through, what are some gentle, trauma-informed ways to actually start reconnecting? Especially, and I think this is key, when energy is just rock bottom, because that's often the biggest hurdle, right?
That's absolutely a challenge. And you're right, healing isn't about productivity or some kind of forced positivity. It's much more about befriending your own nervous system, honoring your story, and gently, slowly moving towards safety, both inside and out.
So when that energy is low, where do you even begin?
You begin incredibly small. Like micro steps, seriously small. Maybe just one conscious deep breath, focusing on the exhale. Maybe just getting a glass of water, or sitting by a window for a minute to get some sunlight, or even just sending a kind text message to yourself. Yeah, like I'm having a hard time, and that's okay. Just acknowledging it. The goal is maybe one nourishing act a day, and letting that be enough. Don't push for more.
Regulation before activation, you mean?
Exactly. Regulate before you activate. Depression lives so much in the body.
Yes.
So before you try to do anything big, prioritize just calming the system a little.
Like what kind of things?
Well, breath work, like we mentioned, especially longer exhales, that really helps calm the vagus nerve, which is key for relaxation.
Okay.
Using things like weighted blankets can feel very grounding. Gentle movement, and I mean gentle, like a slow walk, maybe some easy stretching, nothing strenuous. Or even safe touch, a self-hug, placing a hand on your heart. These things signal safety.
It's about calming the system down first.
Precisely. Your nervous system might not be ready for, exuberant joy right now, but it might just be ready for a tiny bit less tension. And that's a win.
That feels so much more doable than, say, forcing yourself to go to the gym when you feel like you can't move.
Exactly. It meets you where you are.
So starting small, focusing on regulation. What else?
Another really powerful tool is simply naming what's real, but without the judgment.
How do you mean?
Just shifting your language internally. So instead of thinking I'm broken or I'm lazy, try noticing, okay, I feel really shut down right now, or something inside me feels incredibly tired, or even this part of me seems to be trying to protect me.
Separating yourself from the feeling a bit.
Yes, naming it, describing it, rather than identifying with it as who you are. That simple shift creates emotional space. It starts to loosen the grip shame can have.
That makes sense.
Also, journaling can be really helpful, but again, gently, from the inside out.
What kind of prompts?
Maybe things like, what might my depression be protecting me from? Or what feelings have I maybe been avoiding lately? Or what do I really need right now that I've been perhaps afraid to ask for, even for myself? And the key is to write without pressure. Don't worry about grammar or making sense. Just let whatever's inside come out onto the page. Let the body speak.
And you mentioned connection earlier, how vital it is, but also how depression makes us isolate. How do you bridge that gap?
Slowly and safely. That's the key. Reconnect, yes, but do it slowly and safely. Acknowledge that depression pulls you inward, but healing does happen in connection.
So not jumping into big social events.
Probably not, no. Think low pressure, maybe just sitting in comfortable silence with one trusted friend, or sending that simple text, hey, I'm not really okay today, to someone you know is safe.
Okay.
Maybe joining a very gentle online support group where you can just listen if you want. The point is, even tiny moments of feeling seen or understood, that attunement, can start to gently reawaken your social nervous system, can chip away at the depressive symptoms.
These are all really practical, gentle steps. What about that tendency, though, that many of us have when we feel low to kind of numb out? Screens, sugar, just zoning out completely.
Yeah, that's a really common pattern. Depression often leads us towards those quick, easy, often passive ways to soothe ourselves or just escape the feeling.
Right.
But healing often involves making a conscious choice, even a small one, towards nourishment instead of just numbing.
Nourishment, like healthy food?
It can be, yes, like making sure you have one warm, decent meal.
Yeah.
But nourishment is broader than that. It
Right.
could be that short walk outside we mentioned. It could be listening to a piece of music that actually matches your mood rather than try to force yourself to feel happy.
So validating the feeling through music.
Exactly. Or it could be saying no to something that you know will drain your already limited energy. These small, deliberate acts of self-con, even when your energy is really low, they send signals to your brain. Signals that say, okay, maybe it's safe enough to feel again, just a little.
This whole framework, understanding the protection, the nervous system, it offers so much insight. But it also sounds like, honestly, a lot to try and navigate by yourself.
It can be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how can getting professional support, like therapy, actually help with this specific approach? And, the question of medication always comes up, too. Is it something you have to do to heal?
You definitely don't have to do this alone. And a good trauma-informed therapist can be incredibly valuable on this journey.
How so?
Well, they can help you make sense of your symptoms within this kind of framework, help you understand your own emotional history, how it connects. They can help you gently identify and understand those protective parts that manifest as depression.
Right, the protectors.
Exactly. And critically, they provide a safe space to actually feel and process some of those emotions that might have been repressed for a long time. Plus, they help you build those practical tools for regulation and reconnection we've been talking about.
And the medication question, do people need it?
Not necessarily, no. Medication can be really, really helpful for some people. It can provide crucial stability, like a raft, when things feel completely overwhelming, making therapy or other work possible. But others find deep healing, primarily through therapy, through dedicated nervous system work, emotional processing, lifestyle changes. There really is no single right answer. It's not one size fits all. It's about finding the combination of supports that genuinely helps you on your unique path forward.
And if maybe traditional therapy isn't an option right now?
There are other avenues. Looking at community mental health centers, sometimes they have sliding scales. There are increasingly good online trauma-informed peer support groups. And even reliable books and, well, deep dives like this one can offer valuable insights and tools.
That's good to know there are options. One last question that often comes up, especially for people who've lived with depression for a long time. Sometimes it just feels like this is it, like joy is just gone forever.
Right.
Is it really possible to feel joy again after that?
Yes, it absolutely is possible. I really want to emphasize that.
Okay.
Joy might return differently than you expect, maybe slowly, unexpectedly, often in very small moments. At first, the warmth of the sun, a moment of connection, the taste of something good.
Small moments.
Yes. Healing really starts with presence, with allowing what is, rather than putting pressure on yourself to feel something you don't. But trust, truly trust, that your inherent capacity to feel the full range of human emotion, including joy, is still alive inside you. Even if it feels very, very quiet right now, it's a journey back to yourself. One gentle step, then another.
So wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you, our listener, as you navigate your own experience? We've really learned today that depression isn't some kind of proof that you've failed.
Not at all.
Instead, maybe view it as evidence. Evidence of your incredible effort to survive, perhaps without the full support you truly needed and deserved. It's like a freeze frame of your nervous system, a powerful signal that something inside you has been holding far too much for far too long, often feeling utterly alone in it.
But the profound truth, the hopeful truth, is that healing is possible. It won't happen overnight, and it certainly won't happen through force or self-criticism. It happens through gentle attention, through building safety, inside and out, through seeking meaningful connection, and through honoring your own truth.
Every single time you offer just a little bit of compassion to those shut down parts of yourself, every time you choose one small act of nourishment over numbing, every time you can gently say, okay, I'm here, even to your own pain, you are taking one vital step back towards yourself. And that right there, that is hope.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today.
We really encourage you to carry these insights forward with compassion, with curiosity, both for yourself and maybe for others in your life too.